Discover the amazing moment when a hidden connection transformed a billionaire's heart forever. Jake Thompson stood at the edge of the crowded gala, feeling like an outsider in his own kingdom. The ornate chandeliers cascaded light over the clinking glasses of the elite, but all he saw was a shimmering facade, $20 million smiles plastered over hollow souls. Being a billionaire in Chicago's tech industry came with a burden he never quite grasped as a kid, a growing isolation that seemed to echo louder than any applause. He inhaled sharply, forcing himself to drown out the memories of a father who had abandoned him and a mother lost in addiction. Instead of connection, wealth had brought him only aloneness. As he scanned the sea of faces, awkward laughter rang in his ears while his interior shadows danced just out of reach. The weight of expectation pressed heavily on him like a noose, the image of success painted within walls of glass and steel. At his core, he sensed he was a gaping wound wrapped in tailored suits, a stark contrast to the warmth of authenticity he craved. But tonight, something nagged at him, urging him to push through the emptiness. The night drifted along until Clara Hart caught his eye, a radiant light amidst the materialistic haze. As a social worker advocating for underprivileged families, her enthusiasm rang almost jarring against the polished atmosphere. With a skeptical glance, Jake approached, ready to dismiss her idealism as naive and inconsequential, yet, as they engaged in conversation, her unwavering spirit struck a chord within him. Clara opened up about her own burdens, the shame she carried from a father who had fallen from grace. Somewhere between her laughter and the weight of her vulnerability, Jake felt an unanticipated stir. For the first time in years, he was pulled toward another's pain, her honesty budding warmth in the hollow ache he'd been holding, but the moment of comfort was fleeting. Beneath the surface, Jake sensed his internal conflict churning. Should he shift his resources to support her mission or cling to his self-indulgent triumphs? The tension tightened in his chest, success defined through wealth or authenticity through connection. The realization bore down on him. How could he foster Clara's dream when he had spent so long constructing his own elaborate illusion? The dilemma rattled him, locking him into an agonizing indecision. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just then, a hidden connection unveiled itself as Jake poured through family records the next day. His estranged father, who had haunted his thoughts for decades, was once a mentor to Clara's father. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave, his world tilting on its axis. How could he reconcile the man who abandoned him with the transformational journey of this woman who embodied the very vulnerability he both craved and feared? Caught in this tempest, Jake felt his carefully constructed empire quaking as he faced the consequences of choosing success over connection throughout his life. As Clara's words echoed in his mind, pushing against the suffocating grip of his affluent circle, he could no longer ignore the weight of his choices. A deep, visceral confrontation was brewing within him, teetering on the precipice of overdrive. Now, standing amidst the crumbling corporate fortress he had built, Jake's heart raced, straining against the pull to either retreat into safety or pursue the fragile, terrifying thread of human connection. He sensed Clara's unwavering passion for her cause, her belief almost contagious, yet it cast a blinding spotlight on his own failures. Could he really redefine success? Can he risk everything he had built in pursuit of meaningful relationship? As he lingered with this internal baggage, a sudden knock at the door sent his heart thundering. The revelation it clutched could unravel all he knew, throwing Jake into a chaos that left his future wide open, a nexus between two worlds spiraling together, just when he thought he finally understood which path to choose. Jake opened the door, revealing a figure shrouded by the dim hallway light. It was Clara, her eyes wide with urgency. "I needed to talk to you," she blurted out, stepping into the threshold without waiting for an invitation. The tension in the air curled around them, thick and palpable as they both understood the storm brewing within Jake. He motioned for her to take a seat, feeling as if he were welcoming an uninvited guest into a space laden with secrets. As Clara perched on the edge of the designer chair, her presence ignited his turmoil, her unfiltered energy a stark contrast to the sterile decor of his office. Did you find what you were looking for? Clara asked softly, her gaze probing for truths hidden beneath the surface. Jake clenched his jaw, words escaping him. He felt exposed, his entire existence left bare as the connection to Clara, once an innocent curiosity, now threatened to unravel the very fabric of his reality. About your father, he started, halting. Was this truly the subject they needed to tackle? But Clara's expression urged him on. He had always been adept at navigating tech innovations, managing billions, but the emotional landscape was a terrain marked by fear and uncertainty. I found out my father knew yours. They worked together. Her brows knit together, surprise washing over her features as if his words had unlocked a new layer of understanding. You're serious? Yes, he admitted, his voice low. My father was not the man I needed him to be. Her eyes softened, and Jake felt something shift in the air between them. It was almost as if the past was clawing its way into the present, intermingling their narratives in a way that felt both strange and inevitable. But that doesn't mean you're defined by him or his choices, Clara countered, her tone shifting from shock to conviction. You have the power to decide who you want to be. You don't have to live in his shadow. Her words hung in the air, filling the vast void he'd cultivated around himself. The walls of wealth and status felt suffocating now, restricting his desire for something deeper. He couldn't dismiss her. She saw him for all he was not, confronting the very core of his identity. I don't know how, he replied, almost pleadingly. The confession tore at his pride. The billionaire who prided himself on being able to solve any problem could do nothing but grapple with the swirling chaos of emotions she ignited. Clara shook her head gently, yet insistently. Understand this, Jake, vulnerability is not weakness. It's your greatest strength. You want connection, then open yourself to it. As her voice wrapped around him, Jake's thoughts raced. Could he dismantle the fortress he'd spent years erecting? The prospect felt exhilarating and terrifying. His gaze fell to the floor, where uncertainty coiled like a serpent waiting to strike. If he chose vulnerability, he risked exposing himself to further rejection, or worse, the stability of his empire could crumble. Yet, what was it all worth if it wasn't grounded in authentic connection? Risk everything? For authenticity? Jake asked, testing the waters of this new potential. Suddenly, the weight of Clara's expectations felt daunting. Yes, she affirmed, fire in her eyes. I believe you can do it. The air thickened with possibility, and in Clara's unwavering gaze, he glimpsed a pathway forward, a chance to break away from the tyrannical hold of his upbringing and forge his own identity. It would require monumental changes, but the question nagged at him, could he really be brave enough to embrace that transformation? As this burgeoning potential burned within, a phone call shattered the moment, an unknown number flashing on his screen. With a hesitant glance toward Clara, Jake felt a surge of trepidation. It could be the past resurrecting once more, demanding his attention. Could he confront the hidden truths waiting for him, or would he cower away, retreating to the safety of his empire? Only one way to find out. The moment of choice had arrived. Jake stared at the phone, hand hovering above the screen. The persistent vibration sent ripples through his resolve, breaking the stillness that surrounded him. Clara's eyes flicked to the phone, her curiosity mirroring the urgency brewing within him. It was almost as if the call was a summons, pulling him towards something he both feared and craved. He could feel the weight of his decision pressing down, the churning in his gut urging him to regain control. Are you going to answer it? Clara's question cut through his internal chaos, anchoring him to the moment. He exhaled slowly, his heart racing. The safety of inaction loomed large, but Jake understood that to grow, he needed to confront the fears that lay dormant, entwined with his past. I have to, he whispered, sound barely escaping his lips. With resolve, he swiped his thumb across the screen. The instant connection felt electric, yet laden with apprehension. He prepared for a confrontation. The voice on the other end could be an unwelcome reminder of his past, or perhaps a new fork in the road waiting to be navigated. Jake. The voice was familiar, echoing from countless childhood memories, his father's trusted associate, Robert. It's been a long time. The nostalgia hit him like a freight train. Suddenly, he was back in the echoes of his youth, where decisions were predicated on the approval of a man he struggled to respect. "What do you want?" Jake replied, keeping his voice steady, his demeanor ironically poised for a billionaire facing a day-to-day affair. "I have information about your father's projects, things you might not know." The air crackled with unspoken tension, the shades of his father haunting every word Robert spoke. Jake's stomach twisted. "Why now?" he retorted, anger sparking within him. Here it was again, the hint of manipulation that always accompanied news from his father's circle. "Because it's important. It relates to Clara," Robert pressed. Jake shot a glance at Clara, who was also locked onto the call, her expression a mixture of intrigue and worry. The connection between them began to solidify in an unexpected way, wrapped in layers of legacy, privacy, and newfound empowerment. "Tell me," Jake commanded, surprising himself with the fierce intensity behind his voice. "Your father isn't just the man you think he is. There are unfinished projects, deals that involve both our families," Robert revealed, tone serious. "There's a legacy at stake, and you need to understand your role in it." "Legacy?" Jake scoffed, caught off guard. The concept felt like an anchor weighing him down rather than the buoyant energy Clara represented. "Yes. You could either walk away or take control, your choice, Jake." The implication hung heavily between them like storm clouds. After the call ended, Jake felt disoriented. The revelation stirred something deep within, testing the resolve he'd only just begun to form. He was confronted with the reality of his inheritance, but also with the gnawing desire to forge a path of his own, a path that now felt possible thanks to Clara's earlier words. "What did he say?" Clara's voice pulled him back from the precipice of his thoughts. Taking a breath, he hesitated, recognizing the weight of the moment before laying it bare. "He tied me to my father's legacy. Something about unfinished business that involves both of us." Clara's brow furrowed as she processed the information. "And how does that make you feel?" Jake clenched his fists, grappling with the legacy's suffocating embrace. "It terrifies me. It feels like I'm running towards something predetermined rather than choosing my own destiny." "Then don't run. Walk. Or even stand still if that's what you need. Just don't let the past define you," Clara encouraged, her voice still holding the warmth of their earlier exchange. Jake looked into her eyes, feeling a flicker of hope amongst the chaos. Would he let that flicker become a flame? As the stakes escalated around him, the clarity of Clara's words rang true. Now that he had the opportunity to confront his past, could he harness it to reshape his future? His decision felt monumental, like scaling a pinnacle filled with both peril and promise. The unseen path before him loomed, challenging him to climb higher, revealing shadows of both his father's choices and the potential for his own identity. As they stood there, the air taut with possibility, Jake knew he had to make a choice, to peel back layers of his history and find out what lay beneath. But as uncertainty pulsed through him, another call pierced the moment, a reminder that the past wouldn't relinquish its hold so easily. Would the coming revelations offer him a chance at liberation, or would they bind him further to his father's legacy? The gravity of his next decision weighed heavily, and the next chapter of his life was poised to unravel. Jake's heart raced as he tried to catch his breath after the call ended. Each heartbeat echoed in his ears, a constant reminder of the weighty choice that hung over him. Clara's presence beside him felt both grounding and electrifying, a juxtaposition he hadn't encountered before. She was his anchor and the spark that ignited shallow embers of courage in him. "How do you want to approach this?" Clara's voice was gentle, yet probing, forcing Jake to confront not only the immediate concerns but also the legacy roiling beneath the surface. He ran a hand through his hair, the movement betraying his agitation. "I don't know," he admitted, vulnerability spilling from his lips. "I've spent my life avoiding everything that has to do with my father. And now it feels like he's a ghost haunting my decisions." Understanding flickered in Clara's gaze. "Maybe it's time to confront that ghost and determine what parts of his legacy resonate with you and which parts you want to discard." The notion ignited a mix of rebellion and sincerity within him. Jake thought of the expectations he had been trained to uphold and the life he had built to distance himself from those very roots. Could he really reshape, redefine, and roll back years of expectation? Let us dig deeper, he said, resolve hardening in his chest. If I'm tied to whatever this unfinished business is, I want to understand it. I refuse to be a passive player in my own life. With Clara by his side, he felt empowered, solid in his intention to reclaim agency over his narrative. They spent the next hours researching, looking into his father's ventures and partnerships, painful yet insightful revelations blending with the thrill of discovery. What was initially a haunting became a puzzle waiting to be solved. Jake uncovered a slew of projects his father had participated in, ventures rife with intertwined destinies and fleeting alliances. But among the mundane was a single project that prickled at his curiosity, a partnership between their families that had never come to fruition. What if this is the key? Jake pondered aloud, the excitement coursing through him. If I can figure out what this project was meant to accomplish, I might unlock a piece of myself that was never given the chance to exist. It's a chance to understand him, to find meaning in what I've always written off as his failures. Clara smiled, a light of encouragement shining in her eyes. This could be your pathway. But even more important, it's crucial to remain grounded. Remember to define what success looks like for you, not what he expected. This is more than just a legacy. It's about choosing who I want to be, Jake replied, the passion igniting a fire deep within. They spent hours discussing potential strategies, revealing hidden skills Jake had never fully considered. He had a knack for research, and the analytical nature of sifting through documents gave him hope. But there was discipline involved, a necessity for meticulous planning. Feeling the pressure, he glimpsed Clara's thoughtful expression as she strategized alongside him. What if we reached out to some of the people involved? Those who worked directly on these projects? She suggested. Jake's gut churned at the thought. Isn't that dancing with ghosts? What if they only see me as an extension of my father? Or they see you as someone willing to carve out a new identity, Clara countered, her unwavering belief in him opening a pathway of determination. As they delved deeper into planning, Jake grew aware of his own capabilities, the intuitive leaps, the solutions he could propose. With newfound clarity, he insisted on reaching out to Robert again. Perhaps Robert could provide tangible insight into the project that everyone seemed to have forgotten. But as he picked up the phone, fear gripped him again, fear of failing, of reopening old wounds. Are you ready? Clara asked softly, her hand resting on his shoulder. Ready or not, here goes, Jake said, his voice firmer than he felt. As the call connected, dread flooded him, but the desire for liberation surged higher. Robert, he began, as the words slipped through. He was ready to confront the past, yet the future felt uncertain, trembling on the edge of possibility and peril. The outcome of this call could define everything. Would stepping into his father's shadow nurture his growth, or engulf him in a legacy he had long sought to escape? Each revelation tugged at the core of who he was meant to become. The phone rang, and with each ring, tension coiled tighter within Jake. He could hear his own heartbeat, a metronome of dread and expectation. Clara's encouraging presence hovered nearby, a vital reminder that he wasn't alone in this confrontation. But as the call connected, Jake realized this moment could explore the depths of not just his father's past, but his own. Jake, Robert greeted, a low rumble of familiarity that sent shivers through him. The voice was more than a reminder of the man he had aimed to distance himself from. It presented the possibility of answers to questions he had avoided for years. Robert, he replied, keeping his voice steady despite the maelstrom inside. I wanted to speak with you about my father and the projects he was involved in. I think there's one in particular that may hold some significance for me. As Robert began to speak, Jake steered the conversation, attempting to navigate the waters of vulnerability mixed with curiosity. Each detail Robert shared pierced through the fog of understanding that shrouded his father's legacy. The project was an ambitious initiative, designed to bridge communities and foster innovation, a concept Jake had once dismissed as merely another failed dream. A flicker of intrigue ignited within him as various elements unfolded, partnerships, risks taken, all woven together into something meant to mean more than just business. So it wasn't just about profits? Jake mused aloud. He believed in something greater. Exactly, Robert affirmed. Your father was a visionary, Jake. Not just pursuing wealth, but a better world. And yes, failures were part of it, but so were opportunities for growth. Jake's mind raced. Could there be more to the man he had shunned? The pieces of his father's character began to take shape, revealing complexity that he had never dared to acknowledge. Why did it never happen? He pressed, a tremor of hesitation creeping into his voice. There were a lot of factors: timing, resources, resistance, Robert explained. But there was also a misunderstanding that lingered. Your father and I had a falling out, and the project unraveled because of it. For a brief moment, it felt as though the air had shifted. The weight of unresolved history settled between them, and Jake felt himself awakening to the realization of what unearthing this legacy could mean for him. He was not just confronting a ghost, he was igniting connections that had been severed long before his birth. Maybe it's time for a revival, Jake suggested, the words flowing with a newfound resolve. I'd like to explore the possibility of continuing the work he started. Something to truly honor his vision. As Robert responded, Jake grasped deeply that this wasn't just about recreating a project, it was about reshaping his understanding of himself. The image of his father began to morph, transforming from a distant figure into a multifaceted man with dreams and regrets, crowned by ambition and frailty. After the call ended, silence hung in the air, profound yet exhilarating. Clara, who had been listening intently, broke it with an eager smile. You did it. This is the beginning of something. Jake felt the spark of determination shift into a flame. He could see the path ahead was filled with uncertainty, yet it wasn't merely a path shrouded in his father's shadows. It was an avenue of his own making, where he could carve out his identity from the essence of his father's legacy. Let us get to work, he declared, already feeling the weight of clearing away old doubts. As Clara gathered resources, Jake realized that this project needed a strategy, a vision that encompassed not only the business aspects but also the ethical framework he wished to define. It was a daunting task, yet invigorating, prompting him to hypothesize structures and plans that aligned with his own beliefs. Yet beneath the thrill and determination coursing through him, a nagging question loomed. Was he truly prepared to redefine not just his father's vision, but to confront the discontent and expectations seeping from within himself? The looming shadow of doubt lingered, reminding him that facing such a legacy demanded more than courage, it demanded integrity and a commitment to navigate an ambiguous future. With his heart pounding, he met Clara's gaze. We're ready for this next step, but I need to understand more. I need to speak to those who were involved directly. What if they don't see me as anything but my father's son? Clara nodded, her expression a mix of encouragement and caution. But they might see you as someone who is willing to forge his own path. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the blend of anxiety and exhilaration envelop him. He was diving headfirst into uncharted waters, each connection a chance to understand not just what his father wanted, but who he himself was becoming. In that moment of clarity, he understood, the time had indeed come to face the dimensions of his father's legacy not as a shadow to flee from, but as a foundation upon which to build his own dreams. What echoes of the past would he awaken next, and what contradictions would his journey unveil? Jake's resolve solidified as he gathered the stack of papers on his desk. He had mapped out a plan, twisting the uncertainties into a flexible strategy that allowed room for growth. Each sheet, each note dialed up the pulse of possibility. He was preparing to dig into the past, but it wasn't merely an investigation, it was his reclamation of identity. The first step led him to a former colleague of his father's, a man named Lewis. Clara secured a meeting at a small cafe, the kind that beckoned with the aroma of roasted coffee and soft, murmured conversations. When Jake arrived, he felt a flutter of nerves in his stomach, a reminder of how deeply woven his father's legacy was into this venture he was embarking upon. As he settled into the seat opposite Lewis, he steeled himself for the conversation. The older man's sharp gaze held layers of stories, memories that echoed with both warmth and regret. Jake, Lewis began, your father had big ambitions. He brought people together like no one else. A flicker of admiration lit Lewis's eyes. He had this way of making you feel like you could achieve the impossible. Jake felt the weight of the words as they hung in the air. There was a sense of pride intertwined with the history that felt foreign yet familiar. But it didn't work out, Jake prompted, trying to peel back the layers of the past. Louis sighed, tracing a finger around the rim of his coffee cup. No, it didn't. There were moments of brilliance, breakthroughs that could have altered so much. But when ambition clashes with resistance, things often fall apart. Jake leaned in, his curiosity ignited. What was the breaking point? The falling out between him and Robert was catastrophic, Louis revealed, the shadow of regret clouding his expression. Your father went against the grain, trying to innovate in a way others weren't ready for. It created rifts. As Jake absorbed the revelations, he felt a surge of empathy towards the man he had once judged so harshly. His father hadn't merely been a figure to flee from, he had been a pioneer, willing to gamble his reputation for the sake of vision. There was a new aspect of his identity forming, molded by understanding rather than judgment. Fueled by this shift, he pressed on. What can I do to honor that vision? At this, Louis's demeanor softened. You need to approach it differently than he did. Create connections with people who share your values. Start small, build trust, reignite those ambitions with accountability. The conversation cascaded into a new territory of strategic thinking. Jake was no longer defined solely by his father's legacy but was starting to carve his own path. He felt an empowering sense of agency, each idea floating into existence not just as a semblance of nostalgia, but as a firm commitment to reshape that legacy. As they finished discussing the broader scope of revival possibilities, Jake's heart raced with purpose. Yet, the shadows of doubt lingered. Was he truly capable of realizing this vision, or was he just a shadow of the man whose ambitions he was trying to resurrect? Navigating through the questions swirling in his mind, Jake finally looked Louis in the eye, determination etching his voice. I'm ready to lead this, he asserted. But I need to know what blind spots this legacy might hold. Louis nodded, seeing the spark of conviction ignite. Your father may have also underestimated the importance of collaboration. Don't repeat that mistake. As Jake left the cafe, the burden felt lighter. He had clarity, a roadmap was forming in his mind. Each conversation was a step towards uncovering not just what had been lost, but also what could be reclaimed. Yet with every new connection, new layers of uncertainty unfolded. Would he be able to break through the barriers that had held his father back? As he prepared for the next phase, Jake felt the warm glow of optimism settle within him. But beneath that glow lingered the gnawing realization that every choice ahead would carve out his identity, one that might defy expectations. The moment he took his phone out to arrange his next meeting, he hesitated, staring at the contact list. One number stood out: Robert S. Would reaching out again bring clarity or more turmoil into the carefully balanced spectrum he was trying to create? The decision loomed large as he dialed, pulse racing in anticipation. Would this call lead him deeper into his father's world, or would it unravel the fragile tapestry he was beginning to weave? Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he listened to the ringing sound on the other end of the line. Each chime felt like a countdown, measuring the distance between uncertainty and potential revelation. When Robert finally picked up, Jake's voice came out steadier than he felt. Hi, Robert. It's Jake, he managed, feeling the full weight of his father's shadow now merging with his own ambition. Jake. It's been a while, Robert replied, a mix of surprise and wariness evident in his tone. What can I do for you? Jake took a breath, the initial small talk feeling overshadowed by the gravity of their history. I was hoping we could meet. I'm looking to understand my father's legacy better, and I know you were close to him during pivotal times. There was a slight pause, and Jake could almost hear Robert weighing his options, his hesitations. It's sensitive territory. You understand that, right? Of course, Jake said, striving for a calm assertiveness. But I believe it's important to learn from where things went wrong. I think we could illustrate something different together. He sensed the shift in Robert's demeanor, the tension flickering with a spark of intrigue. All right, Robert finally said. How about we meet at that diner on the corner of 5th? Tomorrow at 3? See you then, Jake replied, a mixture of relief and anxiety swelled within him. As he hung up, Jake considered how this meeting could potentially unravel more than just past grievances. It could shed light on the paths not taken, on his father's missed opportunities, and perhaps, illuminate his own. However, the mirror he was holding was made of glass, and peering into it brought a sense of vulnerability that left him questioning if he was ready for the reflections it would reveal. The next day, he arrived early, pacing outside the diner, his mind racing through a web of questions. The clatter of cutlery, the sizzle of something frying, the casual laughter of patrons, all these sounds melded into a rushing tide of apprehension. He wondered what Robert would say about their shared history, the choices that had divided them, and the wisdom he might possess. When Robert arrived, he had an air of cautious confidence. His hands were tucked into his pockets, and he scanned the diner briefly before locking eyes with Jake. The moment felt charged, as if fate had written this script long before they stepped into the diner. "Glad you made it," Robert said, sliding into the booth with a mix of curiosity and reluctance. Jake saw the shadows of their previous conflicts flickering in Robert's eyes, but beneath this, there was also something else, a desire for reconciliation. "I appreciate you taking the time," Jake replied, trying to project a steadiness he did not entirely feel. His mind began to swirl with strategies. "From what Lewis told me, you had a unique perspective on my father's vision. What did you see at the core of that ambition?" Robert took a sip of his coffee, his gaze narrowing as memories surfaced. He had a talent for seeing beyond the immediate. But sometimes, that vision came across as arrogance. He wanted to change the world without realizing it needed to change him as well. The words struck Jake like lightning, illuminating veiled truths about his father's struggles. "What do you think he missed?" he ventured, committing to the conversation with his heart. "Trust, Jake. Genuine trust. Collaborators to help him navigate his ideas. Maybe he never allowed himself to be vulnerable enough to seek that out." With each exchange, Jake felt layers of emotion lifting, revealing truths long buried. This was not just about navigating through history, it was about discovering his own capacity for connection and vulnerability, challenging the fears that had once held him back. That as Robert continued, Jake realized a new vision was coming to light, not just of his father's shortcomings, but of the opportunities that lay before him. He could forge his own legacy, one built upon collaboration and trust, rather than isolation and ambition unchecked. By the time they finished, Jake knew he had a decision to make. He held not just the words of Robert tightly in his mind, but also an emerging sense of purpose. It was a stark contrast to the fear he had felt beforehand, yet as he stepped outside the diner, resolve building within him, his attention was drawn to a flyer on a nearby bulletin board. It announced a networking event for innovators, a place that beckoned with new possibilities but carried echoes of impact, collaboration, and past failures. The choice now loomed large before Jake. Should he dive into this opportunity that could leverage his father's legacy, or would it lead him again into murky waters of the past? As he stood there evaluating, the air felt electrified with possibilities, and he knew that with every decision he would either fracture or further connect the tapestry he sought to weave anew. Would he be brave enough to step forward, or would hesitation pull him back into the shadows once more? Jake could feel the weight of the flyer in his hand, the printed words nearly vibrating with potential. Uncertainty loomed large, but more so did the promise of introspection. He couldn't quite shake off Robert's words. The emphasis on trust and vulnerability resonated deeper than any motivational speech he'd ever heard. His father had spent his life shaping a legacy that often felt heavy, like a burden too complex to carry. Now, standing in front of that bulletin board, Jake found himself questioning everything. What if his leap into entrepreneurship wasn't merely about ambition? What if it were also a dance with vulnerability, the vulnerability to fail, to seek help, and to connect? He turned the flyer over, studying the details. The event wasn't just a networking opportunity, it was a gathering of minds, inventors, and creators, people who had likely faced failure before finding success. Would they share the same shadows he feared exploring? Would they understand what it felt like to be the child of someone formidable, someone whose vision had always seemed just out of reach? Jake leaned against the lamppost, taking a deep breath. Here lay a critical juncture, a choice that could shift the axis of his life. The longing to build upon his father's vision ignited within him. He envisioned himself standing side by side with others, engaging not just as an aspiring entrepreneur but also revealing parts of himself, the nooks and crannies shaped by history. The invitation felt like a challenge, to step into the authenticity he had long avoided. Without his father's end goal overshadowing him, could he carve his own path? His resolve solidified, Jake walked away from the bulletin board with a sense of purpose. He decided to attend the event, not just to network, but to learn, to listen, and perhaps to share his own story. He envisioned conversations sparking with the same intensity as his meeting with Robert. Would it be possible for him to resonate with others in a way that could lead to collaborative ideas? He returned home, where the familiar scent of his mother's cooking enveloped him. As much as he defocused externally, his thoughts still tangled around his previous conversations. For the first time, he felt a flicker of pride in what he could potentially accomplish independently. Over the next few hours, Jake pored over resources and updated his resume, a tangible representation of his skills and experience. With each keystroke, he felt a fresh narrative emerging, one not dictated by his father's footsteps, but informed by a newfound self-awareness. But lurking behind the excitement was the undeniable pang of fear. He envisioned the room, filled with established figures juxtaposed against his cautious approach. What if he muddled his words or faltered under scrutiny? The fear of failing his father's legacy was just as daunting as the thought of failure itself. Restlessness consumed him, and he began pacing his living room. In a moment of impulsiveness, he reached for his phone, scrolling through his contacts until his thumb hesitated over Robert's name. He hesitated but fought against it. This time, he wouldn't summon Robert for answers, he would seek him out for connection. With a deep breath, Jake dialed the number, his heart racing. Perhaps Robert could provide a sense of reassurance, a reminder that vulnerability wasn't a weakness but rather a pathway to growth. As the phone rang, his mind raced through myriad possibilities, the stakes rising. Would Robert embrace this new, more vulnerable version of him? Would he too sense the urgency in Jake's desire to connect, if not only for himself, but for their shared history? With each ring echoing in his ear, the gravity of his decision deepened, amplifying his fear and anticipation. This call could be the doorway he needed, leading him toward preparation for the upcoming event or the bright clarity he craved. But as the call connected, a voice on the other end greeted him, and Jake knew he was about to embark on a journey that could change everything. The moment of truth had arrived, one step at a time. Jake felt a rush of emotion as Robert's familiar voice filled his ear. It was a simple greeting, but it carried an unexpected weight. There was a comfort in knowing that he wasn't alone in this endeavor, that someone who understood him was on the other end of the line. "Hey, Jake. It's good to hear from you," Robert said, his tone warm but layered with curiosity. Jake took a breath, struggling to find the words that would accurately convey his feelings. He was not just reaching out to speak, he was stepping into a space filled with vulnerability, a territory he had long avoided. "Hi, Robert. I wanted to talk. I've been thinking about attending an entrepreneurial event, one aimed at connecting creators and innovators." "That sounds intriguing. What's holding you back?" Robert's inquiry felt both supportive and probing, sharpening Jake's self-awareness. This was it, an opening to explore his fears instead of pushing them down. "Honestly, it's just the fear of failing," Jake admitted. He could hear the slight pause in Robert's response, like the weight of his honesty shifted the conversation. "I've been riding on the coattails of my father's legacy for so long. It's daunting to think about stepping out on my own." A silence stretched between them, and with it came the uncomfortable feeling of exposure, yet Jake persisted. "And I keep wondering if I'm good enough to carve my own path. I don't want to let his vision down." Robert's voice softened, infused with understanding. "You realize that legacies carry different meanings for different people, right? Your father may have built something monumental, but that doesn't mean you're meant to replicate it. Embrace your own journey, it can be a beautiful addition to what he created." His words resonated with Jake, prompting a reflection that brought forth newfound determination. Could it be true? Could he craft a narrative that merged his own references with his father's vision without overwhelming him? What if I aren't enough? What if the conversations go nowhere, and I've just set myself up for another failure? Jake's words tumbled out, wrapped in layers of trepidation, challenging the very foundation of what he had hoped to build. "Think of conversations as opportunities to learn," Robert suggested, his calm demeanor like an anchor. "Every interaction holds the potential for growth, whether it's a success or a stumble. You learn from both. You don't have to have it all figured out. This was a new perspective, one that shifted Jake's view of vulnerability from a frightening abyss to a transformative embrace. Robert's encouragement became a sturdy stepping stone, revealing that he could anchor his ambitions in his authentic self rather than striving to meet expectations. With the lines still buzzing with an electric hum of possibility, Jake considered Robert's words. He felt the seeds of motivation taking root inside him, coaxing him into a deeper engagement with his goals. Would it be possible to stand before others, share his insights, and recognize his worth beyond the weight of expectation? Thanks, Robert. This means a lot. I'm starting to understand that my fears can guide me more toward authenticity than they can paralyze me. That's the spirit, Robert replied. And remember, you're not alone in this. What you're doing taking that step is what growth is all about, even if it feels daunting. Jake ended the call feeling lighter, forged anew by the connection he cherished. It was not just about preparing for an upcoming event, it was about preparing a path that blended courage with authenticity. That he spent the next few days sifting through ideas and jotting notes, allowing his thoughts to flow unfiltered. Each morning, he rose with renewed vigor, ready to view the forthcoming encounter not merely as a potential introduction but as a forum for self-exploration and expression. But as he tucked away his notes, a nagging uncertainty began to surface. Would others be as welcoming as Robert had been? As the familiar dread of judgment encroached on his newfound courage, Jake realized he had a choice to make. How much risk was he willing to embrace? The day approached when he would step into that space of creation, a stage both exhilarating and fearsome. The whispers of doubt fluttered in the backdrop, yet the burgeoning voice of self-belief began to echo louder. With the intertwining of possibility and trepidation, Jake found himself at the crossroads once again, ready to confront the unknown. As the day neared, a sudden thought gripped him. What if this engagement was not just a chance at networking but a chance to redefine success itself? His heart raced, caught between trepidation and allure. Would he emerge from the experience transformed, or would he retreat to the shadows of doubt once more? The moment was approaching, an encounter that could not only reshape his definition of success but his very identity. The evening of the entrepreneurial event arrived, and tension coursed through Jake's veins. He had meticulously prepared, notes crammed with ideas and insights rested in his pocket like stones of conviction. Yet, standing outside the venue, the weight of expectation pressed down harder than ever. Would he truly connect with the innovators within, or would he retreat back into his familiar shell of self-doubt? Stepping through the door felt like crossing an invisible threshold into an arena of opportunity. Inside, the room buzzed with conversation and ambition. Innovators and creators mingled, each sharing pieces of their journeys, crafting narratives of resilience. Jake stood for a moment, surveying the sea of engaged faces, and drew a deep breath, letting the pulse of the environment seep into him. This was a chance to bring forth the amalgamation of his father's legacy and his authentic self. With determination lighting his path, he approached a small cluster of people animatedly discussing a shared project. His heart raced as he introduced himself. Overcoming hesitation, he shared snippets about the ideas he had penned and described his vision for rekindling his father's halted community project. He was met with intrigue, nods of understanding, and eyes sparkling with collaborative enthusiasm. As the conversations flowed, Jake felt the layers of armor he had built around himself beginning to disintegrate. He spoke frankly about the fears that had haunted him, the shadows of expectation and legacy, but in doing so, he found resonance rather than judgment. Each connection was a fleeting moment, yet they anchored him deeper into the belief that he was not merely the echo of his father, but a living embodiment of a new vision rooted in authenticity and trust. Throughout the night, he reveled in the exchanges, the laughter punctuated by shared experiences of failure, vulnerability, and triumph. He connected with a woman whose family had faced similar struggles, and her story mirrored his own, a story of resilience buried beneath layers of yearning for connection. After several stimulating discussions, Jake found himself surrounded by a group eager to explore collaborations, their interest ignited by his ideas. As he shared plans, he felt the unease in his heart transform into undeniable excitement. It was no longer about proving himself, it was about co-creating an impact that transcended individual ambitions. Hours later, as the event wound down, Clara appeared at his side, her eyes alight with pride. "You did it, Jake. You truly opened up. The way you engaged people were genuinely invested. You proved to yourself that authenticity attracts connection. The warmth of her words enveloped him like a well-worn blanket after a long winter, his mind immediately flooded with vivid memories of standing alone at the gala where this journey began, feeling trapped in a facade. That self had evolved, and with Clara's encouragement, he had embraced vulnerability as a strength, refusing to be shackled by the shame of his lineage. Through the wisdom he acquired, both from within and from dialogue with others, he began orchestrating a vision that was vibrant and distinctly his own, a delicate weave of another's ambition brought to life through shared human experience. Jake's heart brimmed with an exhilaration that unfurled a sense of liberation. The fear of legacy no longer loomed overhead. Instead, it transformed into a foundation for something dynamically new, crafted from a mosaic of experiences filled with depth, discussion, and empathy. He was recognized, not as the mere extension of his father, but as a singular presence equipped with a diverse range of perspectives ready to form alliances in pursuit of something fulfilling. As he began to exchange contact details with newfound colleagues, Jake felt solid confidence swell within him, a kind of competence that extended beyond wealth, grounded in shared purpose and collaboration. The joy radiated from within as he envisioned the forthcoming collaborations and projects to be birthed from this evening, a testament to his growth. In that moment, enveloped by the palpable energy of acceptance and purpose, Jake knew he had arrived not just at the culmination of an event, but at the precipice of a new chapter. He had not only redefined the narrative of his lineage but had taken definitive steps toward establishing a profound individual purpose grounded in the authentic connections he had long sought after. As they walked out together, Clara turned to him with a playful grin. "Now you see how powerful vulnerability can be?" "I do. I think for the first time, I truly understand what it means to chase fulfillment both personally and professionally." This marked a definitive transformation, one where Jake accomplished not just the rekindling of a corporate legacy, but became a catalyst for connection by choosing authenticity over isolation. He had crafted a narrative interwoven with both his father's and his own vision, a testament to the belief that vulnerability and strength coexist. The night had transformed Jake into an empowered architect of his own legacy, fueled not only by ambition but by a newfound understanding of the significance of genuine human connections. The journey forward awaited him, ready to be written one collaborative step at a time. Now, it's your turn to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire you. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and show your support for storytelling that matters. Comment below with your thoughts and theories on this conclusion. We want to know what you think. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation story. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal growth understand the power of sharing.